What's up, guys? It's Izzy back here again, reviewing the game that Arsenal had against Crystal Palace at the Emirates Stadium as the Gunners looked to bounce back after 3 consecutive losses in all competitions. They were facing a Crystal Palace side who, despite winning their last league game 3-1, were coming into this game on a very bad run of only having won that one game in their last 10. So it was vitally important for both sides to try and pick up 3 points, especially Crystal Palace, because they are teetering right on the brink of trying to fight a relegation battle, which is not going to be good for them, especially since they have a very young squad. They have an aging manager, and their fans are putting a lot of pressure on their team to try and perform well. If you're new to the channel, you know exactly what to do. Hit that like and the subscribe button to let YouTube and everybody else know that you are enjoying this content. Thank you so much for your support so far, and now on to the game. In this game, Arsenal wanted to come out of the traps early because one of the criticisms that they faced over the last few weeks is that they just don't score. They create a lot of chances, but they do not finish them. So the starting lineup was a little bit interesting. Gabby Martinelli was dropped and Trossard was put in his place. The rest of the team was pretty conventional, although there was a welcome return for Zinchenko, who has come back from injury. On the Crystal Palace side, they did not have Olise, although they had Eze, and they were now looking to try and threaten Arsenal on the counterattack, but they were trying to shut up shop and make sure that they at least try and hold out and counter them on the break. Now, in the first couple of minutes, Arsenal looked as though they were going to try and set the pace. They needed to come out of the blocks and they needed to show their fans something different. After the first 10 minutes, Arsenal were doing most of the play and Crystal Palace were just happy to sit back and try and catch them on the counter. However, this tactic did not work out very well because after 9 minutes, Arsenal went ahead. A bullet header from Gabriel was able to be turned in after a very good corner kick from Declan Rice, something that we didn't know was another thing he had in his locker. Now, Arsenal are very good on set pieces, and one thing Crystal Palace needed to do was defend better on these set pieces. It so happened that Arsenal needed something because on open play, they don't seem to create as clear-cut chances as you would expect them to. So the best opportunity for them to open up the wounds was to try and get a goal from set pieces. And it looks as though this was something that they had been working on during their time in Dubai. Bukayo Saka said as much during his post-match interview. And it was to no surprise that their very next goal was as a result of another set piece. This time, Gabriel was able to thud in a header, but it was gifted to Henderson as an own goal, so that's pretty unfortunate for him. Now, however, it was a double whammy for him because he looked as though he was impeded on his way to try and save the ball. Arsenal were playing very well at this point, and they had a chance to make it 3-0. Trossard was gifted an opportunity. However, some good defending from Crystal Palace resulted in the ball deflecting off a Palace defender, and it went for a goal kick. However, it should have been a corner kick. The second half began pretty much in the same vein as the first half. Arsenal were doing all of the attacking, and the most sad part about Crystal Palace is that they didn't seem to want to do anything in this game. They already looked beaten even as early as the second half, and they did not really offer that much going forward. Arsenal seemed very comfortable, and for that reason, they just kept on pressing ahead. Arsenal's third goal was a gift, direct gift from Crystal Palace when, from an attacking corner kick, Crystal Palace were unable to turn in the ball, and David Raya was able to have a very comfortable catch, to which he dispensed the ball over to Gabriel Jesus, a very speedy run over on the right-hand side, and he laid off the ball for Trossard to get his goal. At this point, Arsenal were looking very comfortable, and despite the fact that, this is a type of game that Arsenal needed, Crystal Palace did not impose themselves in any manner. And it just seemed as though Arsenal needed this type of game because Crystal Palace were very woeful today. They were atrocious. They didn't really offer much going forward. This was probably the best opponent Arsenal could have hoped for after such a lackluster run of fixtures. Eventually, the game just seemed to die out at that point, and Arsenal were happy with their 3-0 score. Crystal Palace looked as though they were trying to protect the 3-0 score and not get obliterated. However, some lackadaisical play towards the end in the 93rd minute from Eberechi Eze, who was trying to do a pirouette that didn't work out well, was intercepted. Eventually, the ball made its way to Gabi Martinelli over on the left-hand side. acres of space gave him a chance to finish deftly over to the right-hand side of the goalkeeper. Crystal Palace did not seem to have learned their lesson from that very incident, and the scoreline became even more bloated about a minute later when Gabby Martinelli was this time fed by Jorginho, and he was able to have the exact same finish in the exact same corner. It was very, very hard on Crystal Palace at this point because they looked as though they had wanted to just settle for a 3-0 score, but the bloated scoreline was a little flattering to Arsenal because the game, in my opinion, was a 3-0 type score. But because Crystal Palace had capitulated so badly towards the end, Arsenal had a much more favorable scoreline. I do think that the problems that Crystal Palace are having right now are running very deep. They need to find a solution. And the question is whether or not they are going to be able to let go of Roy Hodgson, who has had so much experience in getting them out of this type of trouble before. So when the camera panned over to Roy Hodgson from his rear side, and you could see the Crystal Palace unfurl a banner that read, basically, they want the owners and the people who have been making all the wrong decisions out. And I can understand where Crystal Palace are coming from this, because in the last 10 years of their Premiership stay, you can think of the fact that Brighton and Hove Albion and the likes of your Aston Villa and your Brentford, who are teams that have pretty much come from below where they were at a certain point, are doing much better than they are now. You look at Brighton and the fact that they're able to kick on. They have European football. And then you look at Aston Villa and what they're doing in the league so far. So I can understand why Crystal Palace feel as though there's a level of stagnation in their team. And it's very hard on Roy Hodgson because you know that he pretty much stepped in out of goodwill to help Crystal Palace to this point. And I do think that the fans are very, very right in believing that their team has stagnated, and most of the decisions that have been made have not served them well. There has been a lot of potential in the team, and you look at the young players such as Eze and Olise and Makgehi, who offer a lot, but whether it's not good and effective management or whether it's poor decisions on the boardroom, they are just lagging behind. And if they keep on in this trajectory, that bottom three is going to start calling out their name eventually. Now, over on the Arsenal side, this is a game that they really needed. They needed a team that was in Crystal Palace's position that's not really going to fight back. We remember last year when they went over to Everton, and Everton had that new manager bounce that they got from Sean Dyche, and they lost that game. If a similar change was made this season and Crystal Palace would have probably had another manager, I could have seen them struggling, because you could see some of the problems that they had from before the break start to rear their head in this one. They needed set pieces to be able to get ahead in this game. And that 2-0 scoreline could have been deceptive, because we've seen Arsenal look a little shaky with 2-0 leads before. We've seen that against Wolves, and we saw it against Nottingham Forest early this season. And so that third goal was very important. I also like the fact of the matter that it was a counterattack goal, and it looked as though Arsenal were very sharp and clinical. So some good things for Arsenal in this game, and some things that they might want to try and rectify before they go and visit Nottingham Forest. It was a comfortable game, and I think that that lent itself to being a very bloated scoreline. I think that Arsenal were well worth their win, but I do think that Crystal Palace's capitulation right at the end added an extra gloss on this game, one that probably another team could not have gotten. I think that if this was a team maybe in the vein of a Luton Town, it probably would have been a closer scoreline, because we saw that with Arsenal before when they were having trouble scoring against teams. The scorelines were much closer despite them being very good. Now, that's all I have for right now. I think it was a pretty good game for Arsenal, one that they needed to have to bounce back. As far as Crystal Palace, I really like Roy Hodgson, and I do think that I hope they give him another chance to be able to try and reclaim their league position right now, because it would be very hard for them to let go of him, especially after all he's been able to do for them. He has been able to help them before when they were in their time of need, and I think he deserves at least a couple more games to be able to try and salvage their situation right now. But anyway, guys, thank you for your support. It's your boy Izzy. Happy for an Arsenal win, but don't get your hopes up, because there's still a lot of things that they need to work on. And until next time, peace.